Let's start. So yesterday you were discussing about anti-anxiety drugs. Specifically, we stopped at buspirone. So इससे पहले anti-anxiety में we went over the classes in previous chapters. We told you what are benzodiazepines and serotonin agonists करना है. Beta blockers I will do briefly. Then we'll study about beta blockers later on in more depth when we come across cardiovascular drugs. Now, first of all, coming to buspirone, this is a serotonin partial agonist. Partial agonist meaning it will not give you 100% efficacy. So for example, if I take it over a graph, let's suppose I'm taking a dose response curve, or if I take uh, a dose time curve, let's suppose I take response time curve. Okay, in the sense that over time I'm getting some efficiency. Okay, I'm measuring the efficiency of the drug over time, meaning normally whenever I give a particular drug, initially at time zero there will be no efficiency. I will not see any effect, and as time progresses, what will happen is the concentration of the drug in your body will increase, and so will the effect of the drug. So even if you take, let's suppose, paracetamol, right, it takes a little bit of time for you to see the effect of paracetamol, at least an hour or two. That after that you'll be able to see the effect. Now I'm using the same for buspirone. Now when we take any other drug, let's suppose I'm taking some normal drug which is a complete agonist, I will get its efficiency something like this. Okay, so let's suppose this is around 90% efficiency and this is around 100% efficiency. I will get almost peak efficiency. All right, this is an agonistic drug which will properly stimulate a particular receptor, or it will give a proper stimulatory effect. Whereas if I have a partial agonistic drug, this fellow, what it will do is, so a partial agonist will only have a little bit of efficiency. It will not have the same efficiency as an agonist. All right, in some cases it will also inhibit. Now, what buspirone specifically does is it is a selective serotonin partial agonist. It will inhibit the release of serotonin. All right, excessive serotonin is not released, because of which you can curb anxiety a little bit. And other than that, it can also act as a weak dopamine antagonist. So it is blocking both neurotransmitters. It is blocking serotonin and it is blocking dopamine. If there is no neurotransmitter, there is lesser chance of the what you call the person having an anxiety attack. All right. Generally speaking, buspirone takes around 2 weeks to show its function, in the sense that anti-anxiety effect develops over 2 weeks. So you need to keep on giving the drug. Almost the dose is around 5 to 15 mg OD to TDS, once a day or 3 times a day, 5 to 15 mg. That you need to give for almost 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I told you, most anti-anxiety drugs, most antipsychotic drugs, they could take a long time for you to for them to show their effect. Okay, sometimes weeks, sometimes months as well. All right, a month or two maybe it will take for the drug to properly accumulate in your body and show its proper effect. Okay, unlike diazepam though, buspirone is not a muscle relaxant and it is not a convulsant. It does not even produce any sedation, so that can be advantageous to you, because it does not cause any particular type of sedation. You can give it in patients whom you want to avoid sedation in. So if someone is, let's suppose, a young adult who goes to work and things like that, you do not want them having sedation during the day, so you can give buspirone in such senses. All right. Other than that, it can be used for mild to moderate anxiety. Okay, particularly beneficial when you do not want to create sedation. Now, coming to side effects of buspirone, you will have headache, dizziness, tachycardia might occur. Sometimes patients will become restless. Okay, they will not exactly have an anxiety attack, but they will become restless. Right, tachycardia is common though. Tachycardia occurs with buspirone. Another drug that I told you yesterday about, one class of drug is beta blockers, specifically propranolol. Now, why are we giving a beta blocker? Beta blocker is technically conventionally a cardio drug that belongs in the cardiac family. So why are we giving it here? Now, in patients with prominent autonomic symptoms like something like anxiety, they will have tremors, they have palpitations, hypertension, and propranolol is very useful in those senses. They will be useful when a patient is having anxiety, like if they are going for public speaking or stage performance. In things like that, you can give or you can take beta blockers along with diazepam. Okay, well, adjuvant with benzodiazepines, it can be given where it will calm the patient down a little bit, and specifically it will avoid palpitation occurring in the patient or BP spiking in that patient. That is why beta blockers are also sometimes used as anti-anxiety drugs. Okay, so I hope you understood anti-anxiety drugs. That is about anti-anxiety drugs. Not a lot, but whatever is there, that is important. Coming to antidepressants, now depression as such. See, before we discuss about depression as such, we have to discuss about affective disorders. Okay, so you have something called. Please feel free to stop me at any time and ask doubts. Okay, so we have something called affective disorders. These affective disorders are also called mood disorders. Okay, these specifically classify those disorders, or they are a group of disorders associated with depression and mania. So depression and mania are two sides of the same coin. Sometimes some people will have a particular condition called bipolar disorder, where they will stay in phases of depression, then they will go into phases of mania. Okay, mania is exactly opposite of depression. When we try to clinically define depression, we do not know the exact cause of depression. One thing is, it is multifactorial. We cannot exactly pinpoint what is causing depression, but we see a certain symptoms, a few symptoms in the patient. We see a particular pattern in the behavior of that patient. Okay, patient will behave in a certain way. Now, as such, depression is divided into unipolar or bipolar. Okay, bipolar being manic depressive illness, in the sense that the patient will cycle between depression and mania. They will be in phases of mania for a few weeks or a few days, sometimes a few months as well. So bipolar is that when someone is staying in depression for a little bit of time, then again after a few months or weeks they go into mania. So both of them are seen. That will be bipolar. Then you have unipolar. So just write it here. Bipolar disorder. This is basically manic depressive illness. Excuse me. Okay. So the patient will cycle in between mania and depression. Then you have unipolar depression. This can be either reactive or endogenous. Unipolar depression itself is of two types: reactive and, one second. Yeah. So you have two types: reactive and endogenous. When we talk about reactive depression, one second, someone is trying to come in. Right. So reactive depression, this is plainly due to stress. Okay, or it is because of some circumstances that is causing severe amount of stress in a person, wherein the person is going into depression. So that is the main uh, criteria that is seen in such patients who have reactive depression. It is generally the result of stress. Okay, a lot of stress during work or in life in general, a lot of stress that causes depression. Then the second type is endogenous. Now, endogenous depression refers to that type of depression where you have some major biochemical abnormality. Now, when we are talking about anxiety or when we are talking about epilepsy, we came across conditions in which there are a lot of neurotransmitters which are causing excessive transmission, right? So, if I have two neurons like this, let's suppose this is one end of the neuron and this is another end of the neuron, there is excessive transmission of information that might be that can directly cause epilepsy. That is one thing. But in anxiety also, you are trying to decrease these impulses. Okay, that is how you treat anxiety. At least you are trying to calm the patient down by dulling the patient. That is why benzodiazepines are used. Okay, you are trying to dull the patient a little bit, you are trying to calm the patient. Okay, uh, the exact opposite occurs in depression. Now in depression, what will happen is you will not have enough amount of neurotransmitters, or at least what is seen is in some types of depression, at least in endogenous depression, what will happen is there is not enough amount of neurotransmitters, specifically talking about noradrenaline and serotonin. These two are very very less, and they play a very important role. Serotonin, dopamine and noradrenaline play a very important role in maintaining a person's mood. Okay, if those levels fluctuate a lot, sometimes oxytocin will also play a role, but for now we'll be concerning ourselves with serotonin and noradrenaline. Whenever there is a deficiency in these two are called monoamines. Okay, they have a single amino acid, that is why they are called monoamines. Now monoamines, whenever they are low in amount, it is found that it can lead to endogenous depression. That is because both of them are less, or at least it is thought that this will cause depression in CNS activity and overall depression in the mood of the patient. All right, so this is about endogenous depression. Now the type of symptoms that you see in depression can vary a lot, but generally speaking, you will see a few emotional symptoms and you will see biological symptoms. Emotional symptoms being the patient will become sad, they will have misery, they will be literally hopeless, they will have very very low self-esteem, they will not think of themselves being worthy of anything, they will lose interest in doing anything altogether, and sometimes they will have suicidal thoughts. Those are all emotional symptoms. Coming to biological symptoms, see, sometimes what will happen is your emotions, or sometimes, yeah, a lot of times your emotions will dictate how your physical being is. So if you're depressed and you're sad, you generally will not feel to do anything proactive. So biological symptoms will include loss of appetite, you will not feel like eating, you will have fatigue, you will have apathy. Apathy is basically a condition wherein you are not uh, feeling anything, you are not empathetic at all right. Loss of libido, then lack of concentration, you will not be able to concentrate, sleep disturbances, you will not be able to see in depression, sleep disturbances can be of both ends. So sometimes some depressive patients will sleep a lot, or sometimes some patients will have insomnia. So you will see both hypersomnia and insomnia in depressive patients. Depending on the patient, it will change. Okay, we cannot exactly categorize this patient will only have insomnia or this patient will only have hypersomnia. So it can change a lot, especially in bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder, because mania also has some similar symptoms where the patient will not be able to sleep because of a different reason, but it can occur. So they in general what we do see is in depressive disorder, sleep disturbances occur, they will not sleep normally. Right, so that is about a little bit about affective disorders. Now coming to mania specifically, now mania can be considered the opposite of depression in the sense that the patient will be elated, they will have, from overconfidence they will go into arrogance. At that point they will be over enthusiastic, they'll be overconfident, and it is often associated with either aggression or irritation. They'll become very 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 stimulated. Okay, in depression they are literally depressed to the point that they do not want to do anything, whereas in mania they are over enthusiastic, they want to do everything and they literally be jumping around here and there. Okay, they cannot contain their enthusiasm, that kind of condition. Right, now coming to antidepressants specifically, I hope you understood that small monologue about affective disorders and mood disorders. If you have a doubt, please let me know right now. You can put it in the chat as well if you have a doubt. No? Okay. So as I was telling you, depression, one of the main reasons for depression is that these the levels of what do you call norepinephrine, noradrenaline or norepinephrine is low, or serotonin level is low. So what you can do is you can increase the levels of these norepinephrine or noradrenaline and serotonin in your synapse. How you do that is, rather than, you can directly supplement as well, but one popular way of doing it is inhibiting the reuptake of what you call neurotransmitters. Now whenever I have neuronal transmission, so let's suppose I have one neuron and another neuron, I'll try it a little better. So let's suppose this is neuron number one, the presynaptic neuron, and you have neuron number two, postsynaptic neuron. Okay, please be careful of your mics. यहाँ से action potential is coming here. Mamata, please shut your mic down. You are repeatedly opening it. If you have a doubt, please ask, or else please close it. Right. So as I was telling, action potential is traveling from one neuron to the other, and at one point, what will happen is it will come and stimulate one of the vesicles containing neurotransmitters. So let's suppose in our case, here we have a neurotransmitter which is serotonin, okay, 5-HT3. This, upon stimulation, will come to the surface of the neuron on the terminal part of the neuron, and it will undergo exocytosis where molecules of serotonin are released in your synaptic cleft, okay, or in your synapse basically, right? Let's suppose these are the neurotransmitters that are present. Now, whenever they are released, their function is to relay the information from neuron number 1 to neuron number 2, right? They do so by coming and attaching to a receptor present here. They attach here, they create a potential here, and they leave. Okay, that is what they do. Whenever a neurotransmitter is present, whenever it is getting released from the first presynaptic neuron, it will go attached to the receptor present on the postsynaptic neuron, relay the information, whichever information it had to relay. The binding itself will cause a relay in information, and once the function is done, what will happen is this fellow will come out. Okay, normally let's suppose this is that neurotransmitter which has been used, okay, the one that I drew. Now it has already been used. What will happen is this fellow will be taken back by the first neuron. Okay, now whenever we have action potential occurring in the first neuron and it is stimulating the vesicles containing neurotransmitters, there will be a point where if you continuously keep on stimulating your vesicles, all of your neurotransmitters will come out into your synaptic cleft, meaning you cannot propagate action potential anymore. You need neurotransmitters to be present here. So that they can give information or they can pass information. Yeah, Akshay, do you have a doubt? Raise the hand.
Nothing, sir. Nothing.
Acha. Please
Sir,
feel free
nothing,
to
sir.
stop me. It's okay. Please feel free to stop me at any time, any one of you, if you have a doubt. Okay. If you're not able to use your mic, put it in the chat. So I hope you are following. What is happening here is now whenever an action potential from the first neuron. Okay, let's suppose I want to transmit information from here to here. Okay, you need neurotransmitters to do your job. Neurotransmitter will transmit that information to the second neuron and it will come back to the first neuron. It will get absorbed back into the first neuron. That reabsorption of neurotransmitters is called reuptake. Okay, it is taking it back. That is called reuptake. Now this is fine and all when neurons are working properly. Now in a condition like depression, you have decreased amount of neurotransmitters. The number of neurotransmitters that are present, that is already low. So if you have fewer number of neurotransmitters present in the synapse, you will get fewer number of action potentials generating here or threshold potentials generating here, which will eventually become action potentials. Okay, so one way what most of antidepressants do is they will block this reuptake. If you block the reuptake directly, these neurotransmitters will stay in that synaptic cleft for a longer period of time. So for example, let me draw it this way. Let's suppose in a normal neuron or in a normal person's neuron, there are around uh, 500 serotonin molecules in one synaptic cleft. Okay, just one example. Let's suppose whenever your neuron 1 is talking to neuron 2 in a normal person, okay, they are around 500 neurotransmitters. They are coming out of your neuron 1 from here, getting into synaptic cleft and coming and attaching here to a receptor on the surface of neuron 2. So this fellow comes and attaches here and you have this attaching here. Once it is used or once the information has been relayed, this fellow will tend to come out and it will get taken back in. That is reuptake. Okay, that basically continues the cycle. 500 will be used, 500 will be taken back inside. All right. So think of them like basically imagine them as a plates in your hotel. Okay, whenever you go out to eat, let's suppose whenever you're going to out to eat, the restaurant people will give you a plate to eat, and then you leave the plate there, or basically they are taking it back, washing it, and reusing it. Something similar is happening once they have delivered the food. Here, that food being the information, they are taken back. Okay, so this neuron one being the hotel, it takes back the plate. Now let's suppose what do you call, there are not enough number of plates. Instead of 500 plates, let's suppose there are only 300 plates, or there are only 200 plates. Okay, and the number of guests are piling up. So one thing that what do you call, your restaurant people can do is, instead of taking them back into kitchen, they can clean those plates right then and there and give those to the other, what do you call, people who are coming in. Okay, so let's suppose you only have 200 plates and you have 300 guests coming in, or 300 what do you call, people coming in to eat. What you can do is, as soon as more number of people keep coming, obviously you have some people who are going away, you take those plates, immediately wash them, you don't take them back into kitchen. So imagine this reuptake as taking them back into kitchen, where you're giving it to some particular person to clean it and use it. So instead of doing that, you quicken the process by what do you call, cleaning it somewhere in the hall itself, and reusing those plates. Okay, immediately putting them back. So basically you're stopping this step. The same way, what most antidepressants will do is, they will stop this reuptake. If the reuptake does not occur, this neurotransmitter which was used initially, so we have this neurotransmitter which was used, gave the information for the first time, it came out. So let's suppose this is that neurotransmitter again. Instead of being taken back by the first neuron, this fellow will be used again. It will not be absorbed back inside, meaning it will stay in your synaptic cleft for long enough where it can be used again. So what will happen, this fellow will come and get attached to a receptor again, and instead of giving one signal, it will give two signals now. So you have essentially doubled the output. So I hope you are getting the point now. Now 200 neurotransmitters. So here initially you had 500 when they were normal. In a condition like depression, let's suppose you only have 200 neurotransmitters. You are using each neurotransmitter 2 times, meaning you get 400 responses. Correct? That is much better than 200, right? That is one way, one common way of treating depression. I hope you understood the concept here. If you did not understand, please let me know. If you want me to repeat any particular part, or if you want me to repeat the whole thing. Acha, if you understood, then Anusha, online hai? Are you able to hear me? Okay, who is online then? You can respond through chat as well if your microphone is not working. My question is, can you explain what is reuptake? The first question, what is reuptake? Can you please repeat? Okay, you want me to repeat the whole thing? अच्छा, ठीक है. दिनों कहाँ तक समझ में आया? Or should I start with what is a neuron? Okay, then I'll explain the whole thing. 1 second. So let's suppose I have one normal person whose neurotransmission I'm seeing closely. Okay, what will happen in them is, let's suppose this is neuron 1, or presynaptic neuron, and this is neuron number 2, postsynaptic neuron. All right. Whenever there is transmission of information using an action potential, this fellow will come and charge these neurotransmitters, or it will stimulate these neurotransmitters, wherein now electricity will not exactly bounce like this, but it will be conveyed, or the information will be conveyed using neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters will get exocytosed. They will come into your synapse. So you will have neurotransmitters being released here. ठीक है. Specifically, let's suppose we are talking about serotonin. One kya, all of them, one after the other, they will attach to their specific receptors present on the postsynaptic neuron. This is the synapse. So this is after the synapse, this is before the synapse, hence pre and postsynaptic. This will come, stimulate that receptor and create a threshold potential. If you have enough number of threshold potentials being generated, you will get an action potential from your axon hillock. Okay, that is what normally happens. Okay. Now, once it has helped in generation of an action potential, so let's suppose this fellow attached to the receptor and created an action potential, what will happen is this neurotransmitter will be taken back by your first neuron. This step is called reuptake. This is done so that your first neuron is ready for another action potential. It is ready for more information. If all of the neurotransmitters continuously keep coming out, you will not have any neurotransmitters to relay new information. Right, this is what is happening normally. Now in case of depression, what happens is, or what is seen at least, is the number of neurotransmitters that is present in a patient's in a person, that is less. So let's suppose, one second. So let's suppose in a normal patient or in a normal person, there are around 500 neurotransmitters or 500 serotonin molecules, 5-HT3, present in one synapse. Okay, I'm just giving a ballpark number, 500. Okay, 500 serotonin molecules are present, and 500 of them, whenever they are stimulated, 500 will come out, 500 will generate 500 different threshold potentials. Okay, and because of that you will get a certain number of action potentials, and then they will be reabsorbed back inside. That is what has happening normally. In depression, you do not have 500 neurotransmitters, you will have fewer number. Let's suppose the patient has only 200 neurotransmitters present in one synapse. Okay, like that several areas can be affected, and almost the whole brain itself can be affected, where all the synapses have what you call less than half number of neurotransmitters. Now this is a big problem, because the amount of information that is coming in cannot be handled by this 200 neurotransmitters. Okay, one what you call common way of how antidepressants work is they will stop reuptake. So let's suppose I only have 200 now. Okay, I am getting stimulus to these 200 and these 200 are coming out. Instead of just attaching once, see, normally what happens is they will attach once and they will come back, right? Reuptake will occur. Your antidepressants, one common way through which antidepressants work is they will block this reuptake. They will not be taken back inside easily. Okay, at least they will take time for your neurotransmitter to get back inside, at least till the drug is present there, or the rate is slowed down. So what happens is that same neurotransmitter, instead of working once, it will work 2 or 3 times. So यहाँ पर एक बार काम करा. Let's suppose it is working 2 times. Because it is not able to go back inside a neuron, this fellow eventually will come and attach to another receptor present here. So you will get another response. Right? फिर से आगे attach हुए तो again another threshold potential has generated from that same neurotransmitter. So I'm essentially getting double the neurotransmitter, now double the response, right? So from 200 neurotransmitters, I can get 400 impulses. Initially I was getting 500 impulses from 500 neurotransmitters, right? Now I'm getting 400 impulses from 200 neurotransmitters. It can be more as well, it can be less as well. Does not mean all neurotransmitters will do the exact same thing, and does not mean one neurotransmitter can only be used one more time. It may be used more number of times as well. But basically you're trying to increase the number of potentials here by making sure that neurotransmitter sticks in that synaptic cleft for a longer period of time. Okay, that is how antidepressants work, or at least most of antidepressants work, by blocking reuptake of different neurotransmitters. अभी समझ में आया? Okay, Dinung, then what is reuptake? Please explain. Briefly भी चलता. Anyway, whichever you understood. What is reuptake? Reuptake of neurotransmitter. I'm waiting for an answer. सर टू टेक न्यूरॉन बैक न्यूरॉन को वापस ले लेते न्यूरॉन में जा रहा ना माँ टेक न्यूरो ट्रांसमीटर बैक you are sending neurotransmitter back into your neuron so that it can be used again. Okay, so it's okay. So who else is there? Hmm, okay, Priyanka, what do antidepressants do? I just saw your name. You can put it in the chat or you can switch your microphone on and talk as well. What part do neurotransmitters or what part do antidepressants specifically play in this? See, if you're not understanding, you either have to tell me or I will throw you out of the class because you're wasting both of our times. Okay, if you are not able to answer, then once again, I will answer. Urmila, what do antidepressants do? People who are not answering will not get any attendance. I might as well not attend the class now if you're not understanding anything. Kaiku, torture. How do antidepressants work in this sense? Okay, did anyone understand? Those two are not answering. Anyone else? Okay, so no one understood basically, and I've been talking about these neurotransmitters for the past half an hour just like that. तुम लोग को डाउट है तो पूछो ना बाप. Fine, then if you're not understanding, then there is no point in taking a class.